and the maintenance gets a little sketchy when you are talking about assisted living and independent living. You know, mom and dad aren't going to be doing a better job mowing the lawn, you know, or trimming the
But
shrubs.
in your assistant living, your big building, whatever you want to call it, those people would be getting the services, even like in most of these other retirement places. They wash your windows a couple times a year for you, they mow your lawn, they do all that, that's in your main fee, and you pay for it, but you pay for that if you live in a house too. If you can't do the work yourself, you pay for it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And a lot of people, maybe not younger people, but I think a lot of people that are my age, and probably some of you here too, to own something, not that we're going to make money on it, but it's ownership. In other words, it belongs to you.
If you stick a nail in the wall to hang a picture,
And
it's
it's
your
my
wall, you stuck
wall,
a nail
and
in it.
I can do that. You know, even though there are rules to follow in those condos, as Amy can tell you at Bellbrook, there are rules that you have to follow. I have a friend who lives in a retirement one, she can only put certain colors of flowers out in front of her condo, because that's what the board decided. I mean, you know, but that's beside the point. It's just that.
Well, you can have the same thing with homeowner associations.
That's right.
I know in ours, there's restrictions on what you can do with the exterior of your home, what color you can paint, or, you know, that sort of thing. So, the rental question is tied into character.
And I still think it's important, and I have a tendency to somewhat agree with Barb, and I still think that the opportunity is broader if a development like this offers at least some opportunity for private ownership of the land as well as the buildings. The opposite of that, is that a planning question? Well, we spend an awful lot of time looking at zoning, maps, how our township is planned, what land will be used for what, in business and commercial versus residential private ownership, I think, is a huge issue here.
When we talk about
And
the
the
commercial...
opinion, the opinion survey even points to the strength of the idea of, well, it breaches into character, so I'm jumping the gun there.
No, I'm jumping on this.
But back to my point, I still think I would like to know whether or not we're dealing with a business that's going to control 42 acres here into perpetuity, or a different scenario, or a mixture of that. I don't know that we have run into this situation before,
Well, we haven't in this township.
because I still think some of the housing that might have been directed towards the smaller or optional type housing for different age groups still was based on private ownership. I'm not 100% sure, but sometimes when you read, when the public notices go out, notice in your packet, you can read who owns what. And in this particular case, when the public notice went out, we could see who owns what in the surrounding area. Yes, there were some companies owning some chunks of property, but there definitely was private ownership all around this.
Janine, let me just add from the board's perspective. I understand what you're saying. I understand it's a desirable thing. I will guarantee you the board will never go along with that. The board cannot dictate how a business is run. What we're looking at here is this an acceptable use? Does it apply as the PRO? All the things we talked about, traffic. If we start getting into how Mr. Masuri runs his business, we're going to end up in court. So I appreciate the suggestion. If you go to the board, I will guarantee you it will not get approved.
I understand what you're saying, and certainly we can differ on opinions and
That's right.
information. Thank you.
We're tying all these in, but let's...
Just to assist you with this. Mrs. Wallach struggling with this.
Why is this there?
Yes. Well,
Let them talk, you might get the answer you want.
Just want to show you and recognize the other floor.
In regards to, if this were to be a community brought before you by a nonprofit, and there was a religious senior housing facility, and there's stock and ownership are not in units. So there's so many different forms of ownership. It could be be in a form of stock, it could be a co-op. Long-term leasehold is ownership. You still get some depreciation tax advantages. There's all sorts of different forms. In Colorado, what happens is, was brought up by Ms. Carroll's, is that you get higher vacancy rates by pigeonholing a specific type of ownership. What you get two things. The seniors feel trapped into their cottage or ranch home when they should really be going into a more assisted or independent living building. But they are now own that building, own that unit, they can't get out. And they should be receiving more services and receiving more attention. But now they're trapped in there because they're owned it and they can't sell it. It's not as easily to move in the community with that condition. But there's different forms of ownership. There's stock ownership, there's co-op ownership, there's also for sale. And we'll look at those options. I've never made any comments either way in regards to that. I've been very careful with that. Because any answer I give may violate the Fair Housing Act. If all of a sudden, if this is pigeonholed, if this is ownership only, or rental only, that in itself, those conditions placed upon its approval and moving forward, could be some serious consequences. However, there's a balance, but I also want to recognize that all different forms of, there are all different forms of ownership. Long-term leaseholds. There are stock ownerships, there's co-op, there's outright condominium ownership. And all those are viable alternatives. And we're looking at all those. But I will not commit to any one of those as part of the approval, because they could go to, there's no restriction on the homes in Kings Point that are leased, in the hills of Oakland, and in Carrollton Hills that are being leased, and condominiums that are being leased in Claremont, and condominiums and homes that are being leased in Cloisters. There's a significant percentage of those home and condominiums that are being leased. And so it doesn't change the character. What maintains the character is because the PRRO, you have the hooks in regards to what at the next level. This is provided there may be a recommendation. But assuming there's a recommendation, at the next level you have all sorts of stringent, you have a development agreement that has to negotiate with the township board and the township attorney. And in there's criteria as far as materials, maintenance, professional management.
Mr. Sherry, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you. This question of ownership versus rental, I don't know, the decision on whether you own or rent something is a very personal decision. Somebody might disagree with somebody else's view on what they should do. Do you lease your car? Do you own your cars? I happen to own my cars. Some people like to lease them. Some people like a new one every 2 years. I like a new one every 40. It doesn't really make a difference, right? My decision on that. And whether I decide to maintain my cars or don't maintain my cars, and Mr. Stern knows I mean about 40-year-old cars. But same thing with houses. I mean, how many homes right now, how many people are in mortgages, they own their home, but they wish they didn't, in today's market. How many people are tossed out of their homes, even in Oakland Township, and now the home is bank owned. It's not owner occupied, there's nobody in there. The bank owns it. So I don't know how this question of who owns the darn structure is a planning question. I think it's a very important question for the applicant to consider outside of the planning commission. Because the applicant is the one that has to make a business decision about how the applicant intends to market this product. And if Dominic Mosheri thinks that he can fill these things by owning them all and putting renters in them, that's up to him. And if he thinks he can sell these things, and I don't know if it comes down to whether you make more money or less, that's up to him. Those are not planning issues. Those are business issues. Excuse me. And those are decisions that have to be made by the applicant. And, frankly, I don't see the connection of that to a planning consideration. You're all free to look at it the way you want and how it ties into character. It does not change the density of this development, it does not change the traffic of this development, it does not, it will not change the, when we get into future site plan reviews and whatever else, the water management's not gonna change, the natural feature impact is not gonna change one bit, whether it's owned or rented. And so I'm really struggling to see the connection of this to a planning issue. If you want to tie it into character and can show me how the character changes, if this is rented versus owned, let's talk about that, how the character changes. Some people say, well, it changes in terms of how you would maintain it. Tell me how. How does that change? Somebody else is maintaining my home. Chances are I'm not doing it if I'm in one of these things that's being proposed. How does that change whether I own it or don't own it? I don't see it.
Mr. Chair, I just want to bring it to your attention that it's past 10 o'clock. We got to make a decision one way or the other on this issue and how we want to proceed tonight.
Do we need to, well, do you want to keep going with this discussion or do you want to bring it to a close at this point? Do we need a motion if we wanted to continue past 10 o'clock?
Yes, we do.
All right, well,
Can we put a limit on it?
Yes, we would have to put a limit on it.
do whatever you want,
We've done that before.
whatever you want.
I'll make a motion that we continue to 10:30 and at 10:30 we close the meeting.
And the impact on the remaining items on the agenda, we have a Goodison plan update, we have like I said, Goodison plan, sub-area plan update, discussion of the Michigan Planner magazine, commissioners' comments, those will all be pushed to a few, they're kind of ongoing things anyway, right?
Well, I think the Goodison plan should be brought up to date. We met today, and the three of us on the committee, and a lot of other people also.
So is your motion, Barbara, to continue this discussion until 10:30?
No, my motion is to continue the meeting till 10:30.
Okay,
So then we'll have to decide how much time we would need. I don't know, how much time, Larry, for Goodison?
3 minutes.
3 minutes?
10:25, we end the discussion on this and do the rest in 5 minutes?
Well,
Barbara,
That you were the one that was,
Go ahead, you make that
the
motion. I'll
Michigan,
second.
no, but Michigan Planner magazine article. You want
We
to
should
put
start
that on?
talking, we can start talking about it if we have enough time after
Okay.
10:25.
Okay,
And I'll second your motion.
okay.
So, just so that Jim can write it down, what was the motion?
That we, go ahead, you want to repeat the motion?
I think what I heard you say, I think the motion has been made to continue the meeting until 10, to continue the discussion of this agenda item until 10:25.
Right.
Proceed with the remaining items and conclude the meeting at 10:30. That motion is
Correct.
made and supported. Do I have it correct?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we'll go. Continue. Jim, you were about to say something there, I think. Don't you?
No, I don't believe that one.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I interrupted there. We're still talking about the issue of business, about business versus
Yeah, we were concluding on that.
property, yes, and we were summarizing what we thought. We may have to just agree to disagree on this one and move on to another point, but that'd be fine.
Okay.
Can I, one quick thought?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're dealing with the land use. There's nowhere in any zoning ordinance that I've ever read in the past almost 40 years that it mentions rental versus ownership in a zoning ordinance. Multiple family, single family. We are talking about how the land is used. A commercial business land use is just that. It's a store, it's a gas station, it's a fast food restaurant, it's a regular restaurant, it's an industry. Those are businesses, okay? A farmer is a business, but we don't classify